My brother invited us to his lake house, then made my 8-year-old twins sleep in the unheated garage because poor kids bring bugs, while his wife sprayed their backpacks with cleaner. So, I loaded them into the car at 2 a.m. My son whispered, "Can we go where we don't smell bad?" By Friday, their vacation home was locked. The garage smelled like motor oil and old rubber, and when I opened the door and saw my kids, I stood completely still for 3 full seconds before I could make myself move. Nora had her knees pulled to her chest on a folding cot, her purple sleeping bag zipped all the way to her chin, and she was still shivering. Her twin brother Eli was on the floor beside her on a camping mat that wasn't even inflated all the way, his little hip resting against bare concrete, his body curled into itself like he was trying to take up as little space as possible. The single overhead bulb was flickering. There was no heat source in the room. It was 58 degrees outside, and inside this uninsulated concrete box it was maybe 52, and my 8-year-old children were sleeping in it because my brother's wife had decided their backpacks were contaminated. I did not make a sound. I stood in the doorway with my phone in my hand, and I took a photograph of that room, and then I took another one, and then I closed the door quietly and walked back into the house. My brother Derek's lake house sat on private waterfront property about 40 minutes outside the city. 4 bedrooms, a wraparound deck, a boat dock, a matching set of Adirondack chairs painted Nantucket white. He'd bought it 3 years ago with his wife Renata, and this was the first time he'd ever invited me and the kids. I found out later it was because their usual summer guests had cancelled. We were filler. We were backup plans who showed up with backpacks that apparently needed to be sanitized. We'd arrived Friday afternoon. I'd driven 2 hours with the twins, 2 bags of groceries I'd bought to contribute, and a cake. Nora had decorated herself with star-shaped sprinkles because she'd been talking about seeing Uncle Derek's boat for 6 weeks. Renata met us at the door. She looked at Nora's backpack, then at Eli's, and I watched her expression shift from polite greeting into something controlled and careful. "You can leave those outside," she said. I said, "They have their pajamas in there, Renata. They can get them out first. The bags stay on the porch." Nora looked up at me. She had her backpack straps in both hands. She'd decorated the straps with iron-on patches, a rocket ship, a sun, a small dog. She loved those patches. She'd spent an entire Saturday afternoon applying them with me while we watched a movie. I said, "We're fine," and I brought the bags inside. Renata didn't say anything else about it until after dinner, when I was in the kitchen helping with dishes and Derek had taken the kids down to the dock to look at the boat. She came up beside me at the sink and said it in that low, reasonable voice she uses when she's being especially unreasonable. "I'm not trying to be rude, but I looked up the school district your kids go to, and those schools have had lice alerts this year. I just need to be careful with my house." I turned to look at her. "My kids don't have lice, Renata. I'm not saying they do. I'm just being cautious. They had checkups 6 weeks ago. They're healthy." She smiled the way people smile when they've already decided the conversation is over. "I'll set up the guest space. It's comfortable. They'll be fine." The guest space was the garage. She'd put the cots in herself. She'd left a small lamp in there, the kind you use for camping. She'd folded 2 blankets at the foot of each cot, and she'd placed a small bowl of individually wrapped candies on a plastic folding table like that made it a room, like that made it anything other than what it was. I said, "No." She said, "The beds in the house are new." I'd feel terrible if, Renata. No. Derek came in from the dock with the kids behind him, Nora still holding his hand, already brighter because she'd seen the boat and the lake and she'd decided this was a good trip. She'd decided her uncle loved her and this was going to be wonderful. And Eli was telling Derek about a fishing video he'd watched on YouTube and Derek was nodding along and I watched my brother look at me over the kids' heads and I saw in his face that he already knew about the garage and he was hoping I would just let it go. He said, "The garage actually has good ventilation, Jess. It's not like a dungeon. The kids will probably think it's an adventure." Nora's hand went still in his. She looked up at him first, and then she looked at me, and I watched her run the word through her head, garage, and try to decide what expression was safe to make. Eli stopped talking about the fishing video. I said, "Derek, they are 8 years old. It's one weekend. It's a vacation, nobody's being mistreated." Renata came in from the hallway with a spray bottle of cleaning solution and she walked right past both kids to their backpacks and sprayed the outside of both of them down, right there in front of Nora and Eli, in a slow deliberate pass from top to bottom, while they watched. Nora's hands went flat against her sides. Eli looked at the floor. I said, "What are you doing?" "Precautionary," Renata said. The spray hit the iron-on patches. The rocket ship. The sun. The small dog. The whole backpack smelled like chemical cleaner and something chemical underneath that, and Nora took one small step backward and I saw her nostrils move like she was trying not to smell it, like the smell was her fault. I made them dinner. I sat with them at the table and I watched them eat quietly, and Nora ate very carefully, cutting things into small pieces and putting her fork down between bites, which is what she does when she's trying to be good enough, when she's working hard at taking up no space, when she's trying to prove she belongs. Eli didn't finish his plate. Derek and Renata's daughter Brianna, 10 years old, their biological daughter, the only child in that house who had been deemed clean and acceptable, slept in the second bedroom with a white canopy bed and a nightlight shaped like a moon. At 9:30, Renata said, "I'll show the kids to their space." I took them out there myself. I sat with them until they fell asleep, both of them, on those cots, in their coats because I'd made them put their coats on, in a garage that smelled like motor oil and old rubber, with a flickering overhead bulb and no heat. I sat in a folding chair between their cots and I listened to them breathe. And I looked at the cracks in the garage door and the November air coming through them. And I did not move until both of them were fully asleep. Then I went back inside and I sat at the kitchen table with my phone, and I did not sleep. At 1:47 in the morning, I heard a sound from the garage. I went back out. Nora was sitting up on her cot, fully awake, her sleeping bag still zipped to her chin. She wasn't crying. She was past crying, she'd gone somewhere else instead, somewhere internal and quiet that worried me more than tears. She said, "Mom. Can we go where we don't smell bad?" I looked at my daughter. She said it the way a child says something when they've been turning it over for hours, when they've accepted it as fact, when they've swallowed the thing the adults showed them about themselves and decided it must be true. I said, "You don't smell bad, baby. Not even a little. Renata sprayed our stuff." "I know. Does she think we have bugs?" "No." "Then why?" I didn't answer that. I woke Eli up quietly, and I packed both bags while they put their shoes on, and I loaded them into the car, and we drove away at 2 in the morning with the lake house lit up behind us and not a single person inside it coming to the door. Here's what I knew about Derek's lake house on that drive home. I knew because I'd been the one who helped him get it. 3 years ago, Derek had called me in a panic. He and Renata had found the property, they'd made an offer, it had been accepted, and they were $40,000 short on the down payment. Their bank account was a disaster, Renata had been in between jobs, Derek had just switched firms, their credit situation was complicated, and the deal was about to fall through. I was not rich. I want to be clear about that. I was a single mother working a hospital billing job and raising twins on one income in a 2-bedroom apartment, and $40,000 was not money I had lying around. But I had equity in my car, and I had a personal loan I qualified for, and I had savings I'd been building for 5 years toward a down payment on my own place someday, and Derek was my brother, and he sat on the phone with me and he said, "I swear to God I will pay you back, Jess, I swear it, this house is going to be the family gathering place, you and the kids will always have a room there. Always have a room." I made the loan. I wired $40,000 to Derek's account in 2 transfers. I have every bank record. I have the wire confirmations. I have the emails where Derek told me the exact account number and the exact timing and the exact words. "This is for the down payment on the lake property, Jess, I'll put it in writing." He did put it in writing. That email existed. I had saved it since the day he sent it. Derek had paid me back $11,000 over 18 months and then stopped, and when I asked about the rest he said he was working on it. And I let it go because he was my brother. And I believed in the version of him that had held my kids as babies and called himself their favorite uncle. He had never paid back the remaining $29,000. He had also never given us a room. Not until this weekend, when his real guests canceled and he needed warm bodies to fill the house, and even then the room he gave my children was a garage. There was one more thing I knew about the lake house. It was something Derek had mentioned once, almost in passing, about 3 months after they'd bought it. He'd called to tell me about a minor dispute with the county about the property classification. It had something to do with the original deed, and a shared easement on the south boundary of the property, and a recorded agreement that had never been properly updated when the previous owner sold. I'd been half listening at the time. I was making dinner while the kids did homework at the table. But I remembered it. I remembered because Derek had said, "It's a hassle, but it's fine, the easement doesn't affect anything practically." I pulled into my driveway at 4:15 in the morning. I got both kids into the apartment, into their beds, under their own blankets in their own room. Eli fell asleep in under 2 minutes. Nora lay there looking at the ceiling for a while, and I sat on the edge of her bed, and finally she said, "I don't want to go back." "You're never going back," I said. She looked at me. "Are you going to be sad about Uncle Derek?" I smoothed the blanket over her shoulder. "You're my whole heart, Nora. Go to sleep." She closed her eyes. I went to my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and I did not go to bed. I spent Saturday morning making calls. Not angry calls. Not confrontational calls. I called my bank and pulled the full record of both wire transfers and the $11,000 repayment history. I pulled Derek's email out of my archived folder, the one that said this is for the down payment on the lake property, and I forwarded it to my own account with a timestamp note. I called a family law attorney I'd used for a custody matter 2 years ago and left a message. Then I called my cousin Philip. Philip was the quiet one in our family. He was also the one who'd been doing Derek's bookkeeping informally for the past 4 years because Derek trusted him and Philip was good with numbers. Philip had been at my daughter's 5th birthday party, and he'd been at Eli's school play last spring, and he'd watched this family treat me as the lesser sibling my entire adult life without saying anything, and when I called him Saturday morning and told him what had happened in that garage, there was a silence on the line that stretched about 4 seconds. Then he said, "I've been waiting for you to make this call." Philip knew things. He knew that Derek had refinanced the lake property 8 months ago. He knew that the refinance had been processed under terms that included a recorded lien disclosure. He knew, because he'd seen the paperwork as Derek's informal bookkeeper, that Derek had disclosed no outstanding personal debts in that filing, which meant the $29,000 he still owed me did not appear anywhere in that document. That was not a small problem. That was potential loan fraud. I didn't need a courtroom. I didn't need a trial. I needed one letter from an attorney on official letterhead, referencing the wire transfers, the email confirmation, the repayment history that stopped at $11,000, and the refinance filing that omitted the debt, and I needed that letter sent to the bank that held the new mortgage on the lake house. My attorney sent it on Thursday. The bank froze the refinance disbursement pending a debt verification review on Thursday afternoon. The freeze triggered a notification to Derek's account Thursday evening. Derek called me at 8:47 Thursday night, and I watched his name light up my phone screen, and I let it ring. He called 4 more times before midnight. Friday morning, I got a text from Renata. "Jess, please call Derek, this is urgent, the bank is saying there's a hold on the account and we need to clear something up, please just call him." I did not call. Friday afternoon, I got a text from my mother, who had known about the garage incident because I'd told her Sunday morning, and who had said, and I'm quoting her exactly, "Derek probably just didn't think it through, you should try to understand their side." My mother texted me, "Jessica, this has gone far enough, please just talk to him." I texted back, "He put my kids in a garage, Mom. I'm done talking." At 2:15 Friday afternoon, I drove to the lake house. Not to confront anyone. I want to be precise about what I did. I drove to the lake house because Philip had one more piece of information for me. The easement issue Derek had mentioned 3 years ago, the one about the south boundary, had never been resolved. The county had flagged the property in a zoning review 6 months ago, and because Derek had never filed the corrected easement agreement, the property's current legal classification had a cloud on the title. A title cloud meant the property couldn't be sold, transferred, or used as collateral until the cloud was cleared. The refinance freeze had caused Derek's lender to pull a title update. The title update surfaced the cloud. By the time I pulled into the lake house driveway on Friday afternoon, there was a notice from the county assessor's office taped to the front door. Derek's car was in the driveway. Renata's car was in the driveway. I sat in my car for a moment, looked at the notice on the door, and then I called Derek's number. He picked up on the first ring. "Jess. Thank God. Listen, there's been some kind of mix-up with the bank and now the county has sent something to the house and I need you to talk to them. Just tell them the loan was a gift." "It wasn't a gift," I said. Jess, you emailed me and called it a down payment contribution and told me you'd pay it back. I have the email, Derek. I have the wire records. I have 18 months of partial repayment and then nothing. Silence. You put my children in a garage, I said. Nora asked me if she smelled bad. She's 8 years old and she asked me if she smelled bad because your wife sprayed her backpack in front of her like she was a piece of furniture that needed disinfecting. He said, Renata was just, I'm not calling to talk about Renata. I'm calling to tell you I've instructed my attorney to pursue the outstanding $29,000 as a personal loan in default. That's a matter of record now. The bank knows about it. The title company knows about it. The county knows there's a dispute. You're going to destroy us over one weekend, you don't get to tell me what this is over, I said. You told my kids they were too dirty to sleep inside your house. You've been doing that to us for years in smaller ways and I let it go because you're family, and I want you to think about what that word means while your refinance sits frozen. I heard Renata's voice in the background, sharp and high, and I heard Derek say something to her with his hand over the receiver, and then he came back and his voice was different, lower, urgent in a way that had real fear in it. Jess. Please. The property can't, we have payments tied to the refinance, there are contractors, we have commitments, you should have thought about that before you made my son sleep on concrete in November. I ended the call. I sat in the driveway for another 10 seconds. The lake was visible at the end of the property, flat and silver in the afternoon light. It was a beautiful piece of land. I thought about how I had wired $40,000 to make this beautiful piece of land possible, and how my children had slept in the garage at the edge of it, and I put the car in reverse. And I drove home. The refinance disbursement stayed frozen while the debt verification ran its process. That meant the contractors Derek had committed to, they were in the middle of adding a second dock, it turned out, a project Renata had announced to their social circle as their summer upgrade. Those contractors weren't getting paid on schedule. The project stopped. The title cloud required a formal easement filing with the county, which required the cooperation of the neighboring property owner, who had apparently been annoyed about the unresolved issue for 2 years and was not in a hurry to be cooperative. The property couldn't be listed, sold, or refinanced until the cloud was cleared, and the cloud couldn't be cleared until the neighbor agreed to sign the updated easement, and the neighbor wasn't signing anything while he was irritated. Derek's attorney sent my attorney a letter 2 weeks later offering a settlement of the outstanding debt, $15,000, take it or leave it. My attorney wrote back, $29,000 in full, or we filed a civil claim and attach the debt to the property title as a recorded lien. A lien on a property with an existing title cloud is a serious problem. It compounds the cloud. It makes the property effectively untouchable until both issues are resolved, and resolving both issues simultaneously is expensive, slow, and publicly messy. Derek sent the full $29,000 4 weeks after the night I drove home from that lake house at 2 in the morning. He wired it the same way I'd wired it to him. I got a bank notification at 6:43 on a Tuesday morning. I was packing the kids' lunches when my phone lit up. I set down the bread. I looked at the transfer. I thought about my daughter's voice in that garage, her question that she'd been carrying for hours before she said it out loud. Can we go where we don't smell bad? The wire confirmation sat in my account, and I forwarded it to my own folder the same way I'd forwarded everything else, and then I finished packing the lunches. Derek sent a text that same morning, I hope you're happy. You almost cost us the house. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that would mean anything to him, and I was done spending my words on people who had decided my children were a contamination risk. My mother called twice in the following month. She said Derek and Renata were struggling. She said the dock project was months behind. She said Renata was embarrassed in front of their friends. She said she wished I could see the bigger picture. I said, Mom, I need you to listen to me. Nora asked me if she smelled bad. My 8-year-old daughter was sleeping on concrete in November and she thought it was because there was something wrong with her. That is what I see when I look at the bigger picture. My mother was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I know. That was the closest she ever came to saying it plainly. I took it for what it was worth, which was not enough, and I told her I loved her and I got off the phone. Derek and Renata kept the lake house. They cleared the title cloud eventually, after the neighbor agreed to sign the updated easement in exchange for some boundary adjustment they'd been wanting for years. The refinance unfroze. The dock got finished sometime in the spring. Philip told me, and I didn't ask for more details than that. What they don't have is me. They don't have access to my kids, which is the same as saying they don't have access to anything that matters. They don't have someone in their corner when the next financial panic hits, because there will be another one. There is always another one with Derek and Renata, and this time there is no one on the other end of the phone who will wire $40,000 out of her savings and believe the words always have a room. Nora decorated a new backpack last month. New patches. She picked a fox, a lightning bolt, and a small blue house. She applied them herself this time, with the iron, careful and deliberate, pressing each one flat. She held the finished bag up and said, "Does it look good?" I said, "It looks like yours." She put it on and wore it around the apartment for the rest of the afternoon. This child who had spent a night on a concrete floor wondering what was wrong with her smell. This 8-year-old who had tried so hard to be small enough and clean enough and grateful enough for a garage. She wasn't grateful for a garage. She was worth every room in every house, and now she knows it. I have not spoken to my brother since the Tuesday of the wire transfer. I have not responded to holiday texts, birthday messages, or the one voicemail he left in December where he called it all a misunderstanding and said the kids were welcome at the lake house anytime, that Renata had reflected and felt terrible, that family is family. I saved that voicemail. I saved it in the same folder as the wire confirmations, the bank records, the attorney correspondence, and the email where Derek promised me a room. He said family is family. So did I, when I wired him $40,000. The difference is, I meant it for my children, and he used it as a door to keep them out in the cold, and the only reason that door still exists is because I walked away from it and took my kids with me, and I locked his access to us from the outside, where he put them, and I kept the key.